My name is Lyora Quinn, 31 years old. When the realtor slid the key across the counter, I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I watched it glint like a coin I hadn't earned, a cold little moon in my palm that didn't know my name. 2 years of spreadsheets and canceled trips, of YouTube tutorials that lied about how easy drywall is, of nights I sat on a drop cloth with sore knees and grit in my hair. Every room in this place carries my fingerprints like a quiet protest, proof I exist, even when no one is clapping. 3 bedrooms just outside town. A colonial with a crooked spine, the kind of tilt you only see when you've lived with something long enough to stop pretending it's perfect. I reinforced the cracked porch myself. I swapped the light fixtures with nothing but stubbornness and a prayer. The kitchen? Tile by tile until the floor, and I both learned patience. No inheritance, no co-signers, just sweat, debt, and the kind of resolve you grow when you are the quiet one in a family that loves volume. I sent the address to the family chat with a photo that made the house look taller than it is. It's done. I got the house. Come through tonight. I didn't need applause. I didn't even need balloons. Just a proud of you, maybe. A what should we bring? Even a lazy thumbs up would have been a kind of mercy. The message showed, read. Then nothing. Silence made of glass. I set up anyway, because hope is a habit. I put out the good paper plates, aligned the drinks on the counter like soldiers, and brought home a cake from that bakery 2 towns over, the one Mom pretends not to love and always finishes first. I moved a speaker between rooms to hear how bass traveled through the bones of the house, building a playlist that made even the crooked hallway feel like a runway. On the front door, I taped a handwritten note, "Welcome home for all of us." It felt sweet when I wrote it. Later, it would feel like a warning I didn't understand. At 6, I was still unpacking plates. At 7, I was reheating appetizers so the kitchen would smell like a yes instead of a maybe. At 8, the playlist looped. A song repeated its optimism until it sounded strained. At 9, I turned off the porch lights so the neighbors wouldn't watch me wait. The cake's frosting held the light like it was waiting too. At 9:13, my phone lit up with a story tagged by my brother. Party lights, a balcony, the apartment skyline showing off. My mother laughing, hair loose, my father raising a glass, my sister swaying with her toddler snuggled into sleep on her shoulder. My brother clinking a glass with his girlfriend. The caption, "Nothing like our apartment view. New chapter begins now." I watched it once, twice, a third time, until the laughter wore grooves in my chest. At 11:20, the buzzing returned. "Mom." I almost let it die. Almost. Then I answered and said nothing, letting her pour words at me in that bright, slippery way she gets after 2 glasses and approval. She said they were on their way. I asked who they were. She said all of them. I asked why. She said something that still sours the back of my tongue when I think about it. "You can't keep that house without us. Open the door." I told myself she was kidding. I told myself the cake wouldn't look so foolish in a few minutes. I told myself a lot of things until headlights slid along my living room wall like white knives. 1 car, then another, then a third. Doors opened with the casualness of a Sunday visit you invite once and never stop. They weren't empty-handed. My father carried a duffel bag and a folding chair like he was settling in for a long game. My mother held a crock pot like she was stepping into a church basement. My sister wrestled a plastic tub full of toys and clothes, while her husband balanced a car seat and a bag that had the tired shape of a life stuffed inside. My brother laughed in the driveway, checking the angle of his phone against my porch light. They didn't knock. The doorbell went twice, then fast, 3 more times, impatient and confident and loud enough to make my heart find my throat. I opened it because I didn't know how not to. Mom breezed past me into the kitchen, a queen returning to a territory she hadn't chartered. "Oh, look at this. The lighting's too cold, but we'll fix that." Dad nodded at the crown molding like it had asked for approval. My sister asked where the kids could sleep. Asked, not in that curious way, but like a hostess setting herself. Shoes scattered, bags exhaled open. The hallway narrowed into their voices. I stood there expecting the moment where someone would say, "Just kidding." The laughter spilling into apology. The embrace, the safe version of this night. It didn't arrive. My brother, smiling into his phone. Upstairs bath. Does it connect to the bedroom? We're not sharing. My sister, already tugging the ribbon on a curtain. This room could be a playroom. My mother, opening my fridge. We'll need real food. What are you doing? I managed, because there's a kind of quiet that gathers weight until even a small sentence is a feat. Dad turned toward me, voice calm, as if I'd missed a memo. We're staying. You didn't think you keep this house all by yourself, right? I bought it, I said, stupidly factual, as if paper and ink could argue a feeling. Every cent. No one helped me, not a dime. Mom didn't blink. And you wouldn't have made it this far without how we raised you, so technically, it's kind of ours. Something in my stomach turned. A hinge shifting, a lock tripping. I looked at the cake and hated it for not collapsing. I didn't want to fight my first night home. I didn't want to cry in front of them or hand them a story about me being too emotional, a script they keep in their pockets like mints. Fine, I said, voice flat enough to skid. 1 week, that's it. The words left my mouth like receipts I already knew I'd regret. Mom smiled, victorious and tender at once. See, that's my girl. That night, the house changed shape around me. In my room, I lay under the new ceiling fan I hadn't yet decided if I liked, listening to my own house learn other people's rhythms. Cabinet doors opened and closed with the certainty of muscle memory. Furniture dragged a slow arc across the living room. My sister whispered too loud about yellow paint. I fell asleep, not the way you fall into rest, but the way you fall into a pond. Sudden, cold, and shocked, you didn't see it coming. Morning gave me a new map. My coffee maker was gone, replaced with one Mom swore was better for groups. A crayon streak bloomed across the hallway wall, like a flag claimed in the night. My brother took a selfie on my patio, the yard framed like a backdrop. The fridge wore labels. Masking tape, black marker, names that weren't mine. Dad tapped at a pipe in the guest bath and told me the water pressure concerned him, the way he gets concerned for things that aren't broken until he touches them. By noon, Mom had rearranged the pantry for efficiency, which meant nothing I used lived up front anymore. By evening, my sister asked if I could install blackout curtains in the kids' room, a phrase that slid into my ear like a locked door. At dinner, when I said I couldn't, she laughed. New homeowner forgets how to hold a screwdriver, huh? The joke sat there like a wet napkin. In the trash, I found my little welcome home for all of us note, sticky with frosting, folded in half. I couldn't remember if I'd put it there or if the house had spit it out on its own. That night, I stood at the window and watched the street breathe. A neighbor's porch light blinked twice. On, off, on, like a heartbeat or a signal. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself I could do a week. But the thing about boundaries is they have to be seen to be respected. And I was starting to understand I'd been invisible for a long time. By the second day, I realized the week would stretch longer than the 2 years it took me to buy the house. At breakfast, Mom was humming while rearranging the kitchen drawers, moving utensils into some logic only she could see. You'll thank me later, she said, sliding the knives beside the mixing spoons. I like order. Dad nodded from the table, reading the local paper he'd bought like it was already his subscription. The water pressure still seems off. I'll take a look under the sink later. He always said it like a favor, like fixing what wasn't broken was a contribution. I poured coffee, hers, not mine, and stared at the new machine like it had been chosen to mock me. Mom smiled without looking up. Tastes better, doesn't it? That single-serve one you had was so lonely. My throat burned with all the words I didn't say. By noon, my sister's kids had turned the hallway into a crayon mural. My name was missing from the fridge labels. Every shelf now wore masking tape with theirs. Milk, Dad, yogurt, Mom. Snacks, Lydia's kids. The shelf that used to hold my vegetables was now family meals. The only thing that had my name on it was the electric bill on the counter, unpaid and unshared. That afternoon, I found my brother sitting on the back patio with his phone propped on a ring light. He was streaming something, talking about new beginnings and family milestones, my yard in the background, my plants, my fence, my silence turned into his backdrop. He looked up when he noticed me and grinned. Relax, Lee, it's just content. I told him to take it down. He laughed, said, You should be flattered. People love family stories. That night, at dinner, Mom said she'd made a grocery list. "It'll be easier if we start pooling money," she said, sliding a handwritten spreadsheet across the table. "You can transfer your share each week." I blinked. "My share?" Dad nodded. "You eat here too, don't you?" It wasn't even a question. When I said quietly that this was temporary, Mom smiled like I was a child misunderstanding math. "We know, sweetie, but why make things awkward with deadlines?" The laughter that followed wasn't cruel, it was casual, the kind that makes you realize the fight has already been lost before you even raise your voice. Later that night, I sat in my car at the end of the street, staring at my own lit windows. The silhouettes inside were moving, shadows of people arranging a life that wasn't theirs to arrange. I searched my phone for phrases like remove family from house, can I evict relatives, legal notice templates. The answers blurred together until I couldn't tell which ones were laws and which ones were warnings. I told myself I'd wait it out. A week. I could survive that. But the house didn't wait for me. By Wednesday, Mom had replaced my curtains with hers because they're homier. The living room smelled like lavender detergent instead of drywall dust and candles. My sister brought in a box labeled nursery decor. My brother hosted another stream in the garage, showing off his creative space. And then, on Thursday morning, I found it. The plan written in pencil on a printed floor plan of the house. My name marked over the master bedroom. My parents over the guest room. Lydia and her husband in the upstairs rooms. My brother's name sprawled across the garage, studio underlined twice. I stood at the table holding it like evidence. "What is this?" Dad didn't look up from his coffee. "It's just an idea," he said. Mom added, "We're a family, honey. We're stronger together." My sister grinned. "You've got space. You're not even using half of it." Something in me went very still. "1 week," I said again, quieter this time. "You can stay until Sunday. After that, you're gone." Mom didn't flinch. "Don't start this, Leora. You sound just like your father when he gets controlling." He looked up at her, confused, but didn't defend me. He never did. They went back to eating, and I realized they weren't ignoring me. They'd already decided. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing boxes being opened, drawers closing, the soft whir of my brother's camera. I stared at the ceiling and tried to picture silence again. Then, just before dawn, I heard my sister whisper through the wall, "If we can get the kids into that charter school nearby, we won't have to move again." Her husband mumbled something I couldn't make out. Then her voice again, sharper. "He won't kick us out. He never does." She was right, I never did. But that was about to change. Because Friday morning, the house finally crossed the line between borrowed and stolen. Friday morning started with the smell of coffee I didn't buy. The kitchen was full of voices that didn't belong to me. Mom and Lydia whispering over the grocery budget. Dad tapping his foot. My brother laughing too loud at something on his phone. I thought maybe if I moved quietly enough, I could pass through the room without being seen. But then Mom said it again, the phrase that made me want to scream. "We're just getting settled." Settled. As if this was all normal. I went upstairs, grabbed my laptop, and tried to drown the noise with work. The house, though, had other plans. Every slam of a door, every echoing laugh, it all sounded like erasure. By noon, I couldn't stand it. I needed to see something real, something that proved this was still my life. So I opened my phone, and there it was. A video, posted the night before. My brother's girlfriend smiling into the camera, voice dripping with cheer. "Welcome to our dream home." My kitchen behind her, my photos blurred in the background. My brother popped into frame, arm around her. He grinned at the camera. "Our new beginning." He said it like he owned the sentence. The comments were worse. "Such a beautiful family. Love that you all moved in together. Vibes are immaculate." Thousands of likes. Thousands of strangers believing a lie. My stomach dropped. I replayed it twice, 3 times. Then I cast it to the living room TV. "Everyone downstairs," I said, loud enough that the walls heard first. They came slowly, Lydia holding her coffee, Dad still chewing toast, Mom pretending she didn't notice the fury in my voice. My brother was last. He strolled in, smirking, like this was just another morning. I hit play. The video filled the screen, sunlight and laughter bleeding into every corner of my house. My brother's girlfriend said, "This kitchen is where we'll host Sunday brunches." Lydia's kids toddled into frame. Mom's voice could be heard in the background, laughing. Even Dad appeared for a second, carrying that same damn crock pot. When it ended, no one spoke. The air was thick enough to chew. I turned to my brother. Explain. He shrugged. It's just a video, Lee. Calm down. Mom added, don't be dramatic. You know how social media is. I felt something sharp in my chest. You filmed my house. Our house. Like it's yours. Lydia scoffed. You mean our house? It's family property now. Why are you so territorial? I laughed, but it came out wrong. Because I bought it. That was when her husband, quiet, polite, forgettable until now, spoke up. Actually, he said, pulling out his phone, we've been looking into tenant rights. The words hit like ice water. He scrolled through something. If we've stayed here over a week and established residency, you can't legally. Stop, I said. But he didn't. You can't just kick us out, family or not, it's the law. I turned to him, to Lydia, to all of them. You think I didn't see this coming? Their faces shifted, first confusion, then fear. I've got security footage, I said, time-stamped. Every bag, every car, every conversation where I said it was temporary. You want to talk about law? Let's talk about proof. No one moved. Then Mom said it, the line that burned the bridge for good. You'd really do this to your own family? I met her eyes. Yes. Because being family stopped being a reason. It became your excuse. Silence. Dad stared at the floor. Lydia crossed her arms, muttering something about betrayal. My brother grabbed his phone and walked out, swearing under his breath. I looked at the screen still frozen on the video's thumbnail, my brother's girlfriend smiling like she'd won something, and I realized this wasn't chaos. It was strategy. They had never misunderstood me. They had planned it. That night, I sat on the porch steps, watching the street hum with quiet lives that made sense. My neighbor Ron's truck rolled by. He slowed, waved. His headlights flickered once, on, off, on, just like before. And for the first time, I understood it wasn't random. He'd seen them arrive that night. He knew something was off. I texted him, "Need your advice tomorrow." He replied in less than a minute, "You free after church?" I was. And by then, I already knew what I had to do. Sunday morning came with the kind of silence that feels staged, too neat, too temporary. I woke before anyone else. The air smelled like lavender and coffee that wasn't mine. The floor creaked under my feet like it was reminding me who built it. I waited for Ron. At exactly 11:05, his old pickup pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, calm as always, holding a tan folder under one arm. Ron never rushed. But when he looked at me, he didn't smile. "You ready?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure what that meant. We sat on the back patio, the one my brother had claimed for his studio. The sky was soft gray, the kind of weather that feels like a warning disguised as calm. Ron let me talk. I told him everything. How I'd saved for years while my family called me stubborn. How they ignored my messages when I bought the house. How they'd arrived that night, like a moving company, with no contract and no end date. How they'd turned my home into a hive, busy with the kind of noise that makes you forget who you are. He listened, eyes steady, hands still. When I finished, he opened the folder. Inside were printed laws, local codes, even sample documents with blanks for names and dates. "This," he said, tapping the first page, "is a notice to vacate. You'll need 3 copies, one for each adult staying here." He flipped to another sheet. My security footage stills, already printed and time-stamped. "This proves temporary occupancy. You're covered." He reached the last page, a notarized letter he'd drafted for me. "If they refuse to leave, this gives you authority to call enforcement. Keep it simple. Don't argue. Don't explain." I stared at the papers, the weight of them too heavy for their size. "I don't want to hurt them." He nodded. "Then tell the truth and stand by it. That's the hardest kind of love." By noon, I knew what I had to do. Inside, the air felt thicker. My family was scattered across the living room. Mom folding laundry that wasn't hers, Dad tinkering with something in the corner, Lydia scrolling through her phone, my brother pretending to nap. I stood in the doorway, folder in hand. "We need to talk." Mom glanced up. "Can it wait? No." The word surprised even me. They all looked up. I walked to the coffee table, set down 4 identical envelopes. "This is a formal notice to vacate. You have until tonight to leave." Lydia blinked. "You're joking." Dad frowned. "Leora." Mom laughed, the sound brittle. "You're serious." "I am." The quiet stretched like a rubber band. Mom's voice turned soft, dangerous. Sweetheart, you're making a scene. You'll regret this. Lydia chimed in. You've got space. Why does it matter if we stay? We're family. My brother muttered, You're so dramatic, always have been. I didn't look away, because this isn't about space, it's about respect. For a moment, I thought I saw it, the flicker of understanding, a crack in their certainty. But it passed, replaced by something colder, offense. Mom stood, her hands trembling. You think this house makes you better than us? No, I said quietly. It just makes me free. They tried everything after that. Guilt. You'll die alone in this place. Logic. You can't handle a mortgage on one income. Manipulation. We've already told people we live here. Every word hit, but none of them stayed. By 6, my brother was the first to leave. No goodbye, just the slam of a car door echoing through the walls. Lydia took longer, arguing with her husband the whole time, the kids crying, the dog barking somewhere in the chaos. Mom cried too, but it wasn't heartbreak, it was performance. Her tears came with phrases rehearsed for maximum sting. You'll feel this one day, when you're old, when you're alone. Dad carried boxes in silence, one after another, never meeting my eyes. The last thing to leave the house was the crock pot. Mom carried it herself, arms shaking, face unreadable. She paused halfway down the steps. You'll regret this, Leora, she said softly. I didn't answer. I just closed the door. The latch clicked, a small, simple sound, but it felt like thunder. Inside, the silence returned. This time, it wasn't empty. It was earned. I sank to the living room floor, the same spot I'd sat the night I moved in, and let the quiet wrap around me. For the first time in weeks, I could hear my own breathing. The house exhaled with me. The morning after they left, the house felt like it was holding its breath. No cartoons through the walls, no footsteps, no clatter from the kitchen, just stillness. At first, I thought I'd gone deaf. Then the sound returned. Birds, a distant car, the low hum of a fridge that finally had space again. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom and waited for the guilt to hit. It didn't. What came instead was a quiet that felt honest. I made coffee, my coffee, in my machine. The scent filled the air like an old friend returning home. When I opened the fridge, everything inside belonged to me again. The masking tape labels were gone. The shelves were clean, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was trespassing in my own kitchen. I walked through the house slowly, room by room. The living room looked bigger without their bags and boxes. The dining table gleamed again, no piles of folded laundry or unpaid bills. In the hallway, the wall still carried the faint ghost of crayon drawings. I stared at one, a glittery butterfly sticker clinging to the paint. I peeled it off and tossed it into the trash. A tiny sound, but it felt like closure. Mom texted that afternoon, a long paragraph wrapped in scripture and guilt. I read the first few lines. Family is forever. One day you'll understand that love means sacrifice. I didn't respond. A few hours later, Lydia posted something online, a quote about how real family doesn't lock you out. My brother didn't post at all, just silence. Dad sent a letter 3 days later, a real letter, in his slanted handwriting. He said he was disappointed. Said he thought we'd grow old together under one roof. Said he missed the way things used to be. I read it twice, then fed it through the shredder. Because the truth was simple. Things had never been that way. I just kept pretending they were. For years, I'd mistaken survival for peace. I'd told myself that keeping the family happy was the same as being loved, that obedience was loyalty, that silence was safety. But this house, this fragile, imperfect house, had taught me something else. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors that only open from the inside. That evening, I repainted the room they called the nursery. Dark green. Deep, grounding, alive. I opened all the windows, let the smell of paint mix with the cool wind until it didn't smell like their air anymore. As the sun went down, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my shoulders. Ron waved from across the street. He didn't need to say anything. The look was enough. Quiet pride. The kind that comes from someone who's seen you finally stand up straight. Inside, the clock ticked, a rhythm that no longer competed with anyone else's voice. I walked through every room again, touching walls, doors, counters. Each surface whispered the same thing back. mine. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel defiant. I just felt free. And freedom, I realized, doesn't always sound like cheering. Sometimes it sounds like silence. Sometimes it's just the creak of a floor that remembers your footsteps and no one else's. So I sat down on the living room floor, the same place I'd once cried, the same place they'd unpacked their bags, and I closed my eyes. The air was clean, the night was still, and I finally understood. This house wasn't just where I lived. It was where I stopped drowning. It was where I started breathing again. Now I'm not just living here. Now I'm home.